Hello everyone. There's a little bit of a delay, so I just have to wait until it streams for me so I can see that I'm actually live. Turn this on. Okay. So I think we're live. Hello everyone. Hope you can hear me. You probably know me by now. I'm Christina. And Mark is there again, manning the chats if you have joined one of the webinars before. So he'll be talking to you in the chat and you can ask him questions and I'll try to answer them at the end. And let's see. Yeah, so this is the webinar on Smartlists. It's another workflow webinar. So we have the live demo for the users that are new. You can always watch the recordings, by the way, for all these webinars in the YouTube channel. And so yeah, this is a workflow webinar where we kind of dive deeper into one feature of Marvin and kind of look at how you can use it in different ways and how it works. And we'll talk about, the plans we have for it. Last week, we did a focus on projects and the feedback was really good. I think it was helpful for a lot of people, especially because we don't have other resources yet. And the projects, we did a lot of features recently for the projects. So if you haven't seen that already, definitely go check that out as well. And let's just wait until a couple of people are joining. But yeah, I'm kind of curious for the people who are here if you're already using Smartlists or if this is something that maybe you know from other apps. There's different names for it. So sometimes it's also called custom filters or smart filters or custom views. So it's basically all the same idea. Oh, hi Bob. Hi Robert. Great to have you guys. Yes, there's many options. But yeah, so the smart lists are something that right now are not they're not even close to sort of how we want to integrate them. They will play a really, really important role in a lot of future strategies. So it's just kind of important to wrap your head around it, what they are. And they're already very useful. It's probably one of the most versatile strategies that we have. So let's actually jump into it. I'll switch to Marvin so that you can see it. So here I kind of set up the breakdown for this webinar so you can kind of follow along. I'll cross things out. If you're wondering why this is up here, this is a strategy called Day Note. So for each day you get this space here where you can just write anything that you want. Some people use it as a diary because you can also have it archived so you can see for every day what you wrote. But you can use it for just thoughts or breaking down your day, anything. So I just use this to show you the breakdown. So the first question obviously is what are smart lists? I've already kind of mentioned they have different names in different apps. So maybe you already know them as filters. I think Todoist just calls them filters. Some people call them custom filters, smart filters, custom views, lots of names. And basically, they all have the same idea. It's allows you to create these lists that automatically get updated. And these lists just look at a specific subset of all your tasks. So you can define parameters. For example, show me everything that's due in the next 30 days, and it creates this custom list from all the things you have in your master list in Marvin, and just showcases them. So it's kind of like a lens that you look through to look at your tasks in different ways, because in your master list, you have one specific hierarchy that's based on these categories, and you have the different sort of areas of your life, and then you kind of define it by area. But obviously, you can sort tasks and look at tasks by due date and other attributes that they have. And the smart lists allow you to just look at your tasks in different ways. And this can be extremely helpful for a lot of cases. And again, we're going to go over so many examples, and I think by the end of it, it will definitely make sense why also it's called smart list. And I think the name smart comes from they're sort of, you don't have to create those lists, so you don't have to go through your list and collect all the tasks, but it's just automatically generated. And if you add a task that's due soon and you have a smart list where you show everything that's due soon, it will automatically get added to the list. So kind of like You just set up a filter, and then you can always see all your tasks through that filter, through that lens. So let's get to the next point. Well, should you use smart lists? And when should you use smart lists? Why should you use smart lists? That's a really good question, obviously. And I think that most people can benefit from using smart lists, but there's so many different ways to use them, so that there's probably one way that it can help you. But as we're going to go into the workflow ideas, you might see something and think, this is really cool, this makes a lot of sense. But generally, less is more. Like if you use too many different types of setups with the smart lists, you can just kind of complicate things too much. And you also want to avoid having a lot of overhead to maintaining a system. So some of them, we'll kind of go over them, are pretty quick to set up and they don't need maintenance, but others do kind of require you to also do other steps sometimes. So you have to really figure out if the payoff is worth it. And again, with anything and in finding your workflow, sometimes you just need to try it and see if it works, and definitely try one thing at a time. We are going to go over many different workflows, and most likely I would, if you find one that you feel like, oh, this is actually a problem I have struggled with, this could help me with this problem, you can try it. But if it's just, it sounds cool or it sounds fun, but you don't really know what problem it would solve right now, then, you can just wait a bit with it. Definitely, better to have not enough smart lists than too many if you're still sort of at the beginning of trying to find a workflow. But yeah, they can be incredibly, incredibly helpful. And right now in Marvin, we are adding more features to it as we speak. But when you want to figure out where to use the smart lists, they are relevant in just two places right now. First is this sidebar that, you click Plan A and the sidebar comes up and you see your master list, but then you can also see things through those filters that you created. You can see things in your smart list. And that's kind of like the main thing we're going to focus on. Now, if you are already using other strategies, you know that the sidebar also comes up in different places. So if you have the week plan and you plan, weeks at a time, it's the same sidebar. So then you'll have the smart list there. Or if you do the planning ahead, you always get the sidebar. Now, one place where we don't have the sidebar yet, but it's coming in an update, is in the master list. So basically, if you do like using other to-do apps, but maybe there's just one specific feature that you like in Marvin, but you kind of don't want to do this whole planning day business, and for whatever reason, or just sometimes, you will be able in the future to just have more of a traditional setup where you can see the things on the side, and as you click them, you will see the tasks displayed on the right in the master list, and you can check them off more easily right there. So then you could basically create a clone in a way of, for example, Todoist, because Todoist, for example, has already these filters on the top where they filter automatically by everything that they do today, or do the next 7 days, or do in the next 30 days. And of course, you can create many more just like you can in Todoist, and then work like that if you feel like that works better for you. But yeah, right now, the two places where you have the smart list is up here. So when you schedule stuff and plan stuff. And then the other place is everywhere where you see a filter. So the search is a good example. When I click on the search in the top right and I see all the things, I can just use that smart list filter, because here we have some simple filters, if you just want to filter by a label or category. But smart lists are more complex. You can do more interesting things and more complex things. So then you can also just use them here and filter by a smart list here or in your day view. So that's the other way, but we're going to focus on the sidebar. That's where it's kind of helpful the most. So yeah, let's get into setting it up. In the future, you will be able to set it up right here on the top right. This has been requested as well, and it makes a lot of sense, because on the top right, it's sort of these things that you set up once and you kind of reuse, and you have the recurring tasks and saved items. And obviously, you want to be able to see all your smart lists there and set them up there. But for now, you can just open the sidebar by clicking the sun here or clicking X on your keyboard. And then you find the smart list tabs. Like right now, you might be wondering, if you're already using Smartlist, why we have so many tabs here. And this is actually a new feature that's coming up where you can customize tabs as well, just to kind of get more organized. And obviously I used it here so I can show you many different ways of using Smartlists. You usually wouldn't have that many, I would think. But you have the Smartlist by default, and then the master list. So right now we're on the master list tab. That's why we see the master list here. And if you switch to Smartlists, you see all your smart lists. And you can, of course, open them right here and then see what's inside of them and, schedule things like that. Just drag them. But right now, it's also important on how to actually set them up. I already set this up to show you later in the workflows, but at the very bottom, you say Add Smart List, and then you get this dialog. And the first thing you want to do is think about, okay, what smart list am I trying to create and what's the purpose of that? And that will obviously inspire the name, and you have to give it a name. So you can type this in a talk. So on the top. So I'm going to make one where I want to have a list of all the things that I'm dreading, and I'm going to use the frogs to mark tasks that I'm dreading, but you could also use labels. So I'm just going to call this dreaded tasks, which might not be the best name, but we're going to get into that later. And then you can add an emoji. If you're on a Mac, you can do Control Command Spacebar, and then you can just add emojis. And we're obviously going to make a frog. Okay, so we got the name of the smart list, and then you can see all these filters here on the left, and they're kind of grayed out. And if I want to make the smart list based on the item type or the category, I just click on it, and then I can choose how to make this, like define this filter. And just a quick overview so that you can kind of see what we have here. It's obviously a lot, and it also depends on which strategies you have on. But the first one is just if you want to see projects or tasks, so single tasks or projects, or both. Sometimes you may just want to do projects. Then you always have to save it after you click it. So I didn't save it right now. That's why it's still grayed out. Actually, I'm just going to show you. I just have single tasks. So and save this. Then you can, of course, define where it should be in or not in. So if maybe I just want to have dreaded tasks for my Marvin category. And this next one is kind of interesting because I think it's kind of hidden, but it's actually really cool, and you can do a lot of cool things. You can look at the title of it, of a task, so the name of whatever you call a task, and then filter by specific words that come up. So you don't have to, let's say, you have a lot of tasks that are about emailing, because best practices, you should make them start with a verb. So you have tasks email John, email James, email Jessica, and you kind of can just batch them easily. You don't have to give them a label, email, or a label, call someone. You can just search for these words, contains, email, and then it will automatically show you all the tasks that have email. So this is really cool. But I'm gonna not use that now. Labels, of course, it's clear, like tags, as some people call them. It's just very custom. You can add any kind of labels, as many as you want, to your tasks to kind of give it its own organization. Time estimates, if you're using time estimates for tasks, you can figure out tasks that are shorter than maybe 5 minutes, or exactly an hour, or longer than, or no time estimates. Maybe if you always want to have estimates, you could kind of build that into your weekly review and make sure that there's never any tasks in this smart list, because you want everything to have an estimate. Then you can also check how old the task is. So when you created it, maybe you want to have a list of really old tasks, just to kind of to help you with maintenance, and make sure that there's not anything that you've added 100 days ago and you just have no plan on what to do with it. Then due dates, of course, very important. Anything that's overdue or due within the next X days, or due beyond a certain time limit. And then we have the priority stars. We actually have to add the crown in here as well if you're using MIP. The frogs we have, you can do any frog or no frog or any of the frogs. And you can also just look for tasks that are in a specific project. Like if instead of showing you projects in the smart list, you want it to only show tasks, but maybe just tasks that are in a specific project, you can use this. And the next step one is if it's just at the very top of a project. So this can maybe be helpful if you just have a couple projects where you feel like, well, I just want to get started and want to make progress on them. Then you can also filter by scheduled, previously scheduled, and maybe this, we're going to add this a bit, change this a bit, so you can also see tasks that you've procrastinated X days. So they have these procrastination marks. And pinned task is another thing that we introduced, because I'm going to show you a couple of cool ways to use the pin tasks in Smartlists. And then at the very end, the advanced filter, and that's where you can do complicated things where, let's say you want to do 2 labels, like you say, I want to have tasks in this smart list that have this label and this label, or I want to just, they can have this label or this label, so you kind of combine it. Because if you just add filters here, you can stack them, and it will just narrow down your choices more and more. So it will have to then be in this category and have this label and have this estimate. It gets smaller and smaller, but sometimes you also want to do or. Then you can use this advanced strategy. You click on matches, and then it shows you sort of the notation that you have to use, and it's reverse Polish notation. And yeah, we have a couple of examples, and you're using the task and put shortcuts. But I'm definitely going to create more resources because this needs more data. But generally, you don't need this that much, and you can always reach out, and we're happy to help you figure out the correct sentence that you need. But yeah, so as we said, we're doing the frogs. So sorry I got so sidetracked. We're doing any frog. Well, I guess we don't have any frog ones, but that's okay. Here you can, by the way, in the right, always see what you're filtering by, so you can kind of make sure that it's correct. And then you have to save it. And so now we have, at the very bottom, you can see this dreaded task smart list. And the other thing that we added new that I'm going to show you is how to create these tabs. And basically you now have this edit thing on the top right here that says edit tabs. And then you can see, we have some default ones like the this month, this week. If you use planning, you can enable and disable them. And then you can create new ones with this plus button. And it's a way to group smart lists. So of course you can have a tab that's just one smart list. So like, let's say I want to have the frog one that I just created with the dreaded tasks, I called it. And I want to have a shortcut to that. I just create it and edit it and say this maps to the dreaded tasks. And then I have this shortcut here where I directly see inside the smart list. I don't have to go to the smart list here. You can even, make this go away. And yeah, if I want to add more things to it, I can just add other smart lists in it, like this. And then I can go to the tab and those smart lists are in it. There's a way to kind of group things if you have different filters, lots of different filters, and you want to group it. So I think this should cover how to set it up for now. Again, in the future, you'll be able to do it on the top right, which should be easier. It's a bit hidden right now. Sorry about that. And let's get into the workflows, the fun part. So, by the way, I'm going to hide this because this is not part of the workflow. So I have here kind of an overview over different themes for ways to think about of how you could set up your smart list or what they will help you with. And the first kind of category is urgent items so that they're easily accessible. And the one the example that makes the most sense is anything that's due, right? You have your master list, but you need to kind of keep an eye on things that are due soon. This is obviously important when you plan your day, to just always be aware of, okay, well, what are the deadlines? If you have a lot of deadlines, so if you're a student or, you work at a company with a lot of deadlines, and that's why I create this tab for to kind of break things down by how quickly they're due, which is probably the most common thing in all the other to-do apps. So this should be quite familiar. Then I made 3 smart lists, one for doing the next 30 days, 2 for doing the next 7 days, and then a really urgent one for doing the next 2 days. And here you can kind of always see this number, how many items you have in it. So that might be a good idea to have that set up as well. And then part of your get started setup, either the night before when you plan your day, you just kind of check, okay, what's due, and consider that first. If you don't have a lot of due dates in your work, then it probably doesn't make sense, but you can always have it as a tab and just look at it anyway. This is one of these things that it doesn't need maintenance. As long as you stick to this rule that when you add a project or a task does have a deadline and you assign it, then they will get created automatically. So you set it up once and it's basically no maintenance. So you might as well have it. If this is something that sometimes maybe causes you sleepless nights, missing deadlines. Now, if you use planning instead, because you're an entrepreneur, so you don't have kind of fixed deadlines, but you kind of want to create some kind of deadlines for yourself, you would just enable these two tabs this week and this month. And then you can always see what's planned this month and this week. And if you don't know what I mean when I say planned, it is a strategy that's called planning ahead. You can enable it here, and it will allow you to kind of, assign different projects to different months to sort of say, this is what I'm trying to get done this month. Let's turn these back off. So yeah, this is the first kind of category. Urgent items, you can help, Smartlists can help to have urgent items easily accessible, kind of, so you can keep an eye on it. Then the other thing that we're going to talk about now is narrowing down priorities for your planning. Now, what does this mean? Why is this important? So maybe you've already run into this problem, but if you try to plan your day and, you go to your master list and you just see hundreds of tasks, and it's the struggle every day of what should I even plan? Like, how do I prioritize this? You can use it to just maybe make smart lists of your categories, where you just list things that have the red star, for example. So then it's kind of like a smaller sub list that just helps with not feeling so overwhelmed and kind of allows you to not have analysis paralysis. So obviously to do that, you need to also be kind of consistent of assigning stars. And this could be part of the weekly routine, so that every week you kind of look at, your different categories and subcategories and think about the projects that are in there. And if the red stars are still assigned to the things that are truly the most important right now and the most urgent. And then you can just always have a smart list set up to kind of filter it down by just showing you the red stars. So that's another way. So then, your workflow could be first you maybe check what's due, kind of pick stuff from there. Then you also go to your, I didn't actually set this up, but then you go to your tab where you have your prioritized master list, so a smaller set of your master list with priorities, and pick stuff from there. So that's the other helpful thing, to narrow down priorities for planning. But this narrowing down for planning comes in, you can do this in another way as well. And this is what we're going to talk about next. And it combines the custom sections strategy with the smart list. So let me show you what I mean. If I have this plan that this day I have to plan, sometimes it can feel, I have to make the same kinds of decisions over and over, and it's just too many decisions. So another way we can narrow it down is to come up with some kind of rules for the type of tasks we want to do in our day. And this is just one example, and I set this up already. You use the custom sections. I missed it. Okay, here. And the rule that I want to use in my day is I want to have one main focus, one big task I'm working on, 3 medium tasks, and 5 small tasks. So this is kind of a strategy that you can read about on the internet. Several people are using this, and it just helps you also make sure that you don't plan too much. Because obviously, if you have clearly defined what a big task is and a medium task, you will always kind of come to about the same hours. And it just helps you to have a sort of a process of how to think about what to plan, which can be really helpful. You can do this, of course, in so many other ways. Like you could say, well, I just want to do one thing that, brings me forward in my main goal. And then, or I want to have 2 things where I do tasks that I actually really dread. This is sort of to help me practice doing things that I dread. And then I want to have maybe 1 thing that I've never done before, or 1 thing from this category, or 2 things from this category. Like you can, come up with so many different rules. But this is the rules I picked. So then you just create these sections and turn this on. And now you have sections. And how the smart lists come into this is that you can already create smart lists ahead of time that will make this easier to plan every day. So they kind of correlate already what is defined as a big task for you and what's defined as a medium task. So then you can go to this tab 135, which is what this strategy is called. Well, I should say productivity method, not to confuse it with the Marvin strategies. So here I already created these smart lists. And by the way, if you hover over this edit icon, you can always see the filters that are applied to it. So here I just added projects with a red star. And this should be my big tasks. I should define, think about what is my big focus for today. And then, I can schedule that in here. And of course, you might want to work more than 30 minutes on it. So then you can copy this task multiple times, like drag it in multiple times, just for how many. It's still considered, the main focus, the big task, but just sort of you can see your numbers add up if you use the time estimate. So let's say I want to do 2 hours for my big thing. That's a lot. You can get a lot done 2 hours of, focused blocks of 30 minutes. And then I need 3 medium tasks. So here I had this filter set up with the advanced setting, anything that's between 20 and 35 minutes. Of course, I can narrow this down to work if I just want to have my work tasks like this or anything. So then I put stuff like that. And then small tasks is anything that's like smaller than 6 minutes. So this requires you to have time estimates. But again, this is just a basic idea of having these kind of rules for your custom sections where you try to narrow it down what kind of tasks you want to have in your day, and then mirror that as a smart list so it's easier then to pick. So that's that strategy. And again, it's really versatile, and it's just custom sections and corresponding lists. And to do this in different ways, you usually, like with this example, you can use the time estimates, but you can obviously create so much complexity and interesting things with labels. So another kind of example that goes into this idea would be, how you, maybe activities. So then you have writing tasks, you have programming tasks, and maybe your rules are you want to focus at least an hour on programming and 1 hour on writing every day. So then you can set up your custom sections for writing and programming. And then because you labeled your tasks with these things, so anything that's programming, you label as programming. You can even do this in an easier way if, let's say, you already create programming projects in a specific category. Then you don't even have to add labels. So for example, in my case with Marvin, the product, most of these things are programming tasks, developing the product. So then I could just make a smart list and narrow it down, saying everything that's in the product category. So I don't have to add labels. But for writing, writing is kind of something that many tasks are writing related. So yeah, usually you can do a lot here with these custom sections and corresponding lists by using labels. And the next thing, actually I didn't write this down here, but you can also combine the time blocks with lists, which is also really cool. So time blocks, I'm going to turn this on. I already kind of set this up. Can be helpful when you try to think about your day in terms of, well, what times does it make sense to do what things? So the custom sections, it wasn't time specific. It's just something you want to get done. But if you wanted to be a bit more time specific, you could do calendar. And here, one way to think about tasks is how much energy do they require? How much focus do they require? This is very popular. Some people, they just for a whole day, they kind of every hour mark how much energy they have. And then if you do this enough, you can sort of see a curve and patterns. And some people also just know that like after lunch, there's a slump or something like that. So you can kind of map out these things in the in your week where you have high energy and low energy. And then, of course, you want to have corresponding tasks. And so I set this up here for low energy tasks and high energy tasks. And you don't have to do this, for the whole day. You can also just mark out the low energy time block and just have that time block there if you want. But the cool thing is if you have this strategy on, so right now we're not in a time block, but let me extend this so that this is actually in that. you will see in your day view which block you're in right now. So you can also use this to sort of just remind yourself, not schedule anything ahead necessarily, but just remind yourself, oh, right now is actually a low energy phase. So right now, probably shouldn't maybe try to work on all the stuff I have planned, but instead you can try to figure out what you can do that is low energy because you labeled it. By the way, this is something we have to fix. It shows all the recurring tasks. But then you would just sort of, be able to see low energy tasks and then kind of spontaneously drag them into your day based on what you feel like. So that's one way you can use the sort of time blocks with the smart lists. The energy levels is a nice example. And now we're going to get into something very, very creative that I found on the internet once, and I really love this idea, and it's really great. And the idea is that, you can frame your tasks in different ways, and the way you frame them or look at them or even, the name of them can really help you get things done. Because what I mean is, we all have things we don't like to do, and when you see them and it says file taxes or call this company, and it's something you don't like doing, then you're just focusing on this action, right? But there's other things about this task that you could focus on that are more positive. And so it's like you're trying to reframe this task in a positive way. And the smart lists allow you to do that because you don't want to necessarily, you can, but you don't want to call it something else because the title of the task is there to help you figure out what you need to do. But the smart lists, you can do something really cool. So here I created this tab called Feeling Awesome, which is where I reframe the things I have to do in a positive way. And you can do this by focusing on, for example, the emotions that you will have when you get something done. So instead of focusing on, this dread of filing taxes, focus on the emotion you'll get as a reward when you finished it. And I have a couple of examples set up somewhere. I just have to find it. Maybe I deleted it. I don't know where it went. And that kind of just describes the emotions you have. And similarly, you can also focus on the bigger why and goal of why you are doing something. So here I have a couple of things where it says helping people. So, then all the projects that I actually want to do because the ultimate goal is to help people, I put in there. And it's just a very positive way, I think, to approach a to-do list. And there's this woman who, I really don't know why this task is gone. Oh no, maybe I put it here. Sorry. Oh yeah. Okay, so Robin Scott is her name, and she wrote this post on Medium where she tried this for a while, where she made these are basically her smart lists that she made, like triumphant, like things that make her feel triumphant, like client pitches, mission critical stuff, supremely satisfying, and things she feels satisfying when they're done, and then things that give her relief, or things that are just helpful, or also things she just does out of basic decency, and then fit for battle. She does these things like daily run and 10-minute morning meditation. So she just kind of reframed it, and she said it really helped her, and it also made her more aware of maybe where she's overcommitting. So here she said she realized she had so many things she had to do that for her were just basic decency. That's why she's doing it. And then maybe she realized, maybe I just overpromise too much, or I'm too focused on these small things. And it just helps you with a lot of things. So that's a really cool way to use smart lists, where you try to create smart lists based on the outcome, the why, the goal, or emotions that you feel when something is done. And obviously for a lot of these things, again, it's these two options. You either add labels to things. So whenever I create a project, and I know this is something I kind of struggle with, but I will feel massively relieved when it's done, you would just add the label to it. Right now, it doesn't work here yet, but very, very soon with the new master list. But you can add labels in the project view. So this is kind of the workaround you have to do if you want to get started with this right away. And then, of course, the other way, as I mentioned, you can also just sort it already here. So maybe I know anything I do with the product kind of is helping people, right? Or, delighting users could be a category for me to get product features out. So this is this framing. Then we get into anytime activities. So, sometimes we may be, this is kind of relating to the bonus work as well. There's things where we're done with our plan, we just plan really important things. And then we can have a list of sort of things that we can just do anytime. Now, I guess this is more sort of the bonus work, like if you're done, but then there's things that you can drive your work forward, and you can just kind of do them, and they're always helpful. And to set them up, you might want to use pinned task. So if you don't know the pinned task strategy, it allows you to set up tasks that you probably want to do over and over again. So for example, in Marvin, in marketing, like follow 5 relevant people on Twitter. That's, maybe something that will help with spreading the word about Marvin, and it's something I can do anytime. And so I pin it, and when it's pinned, I can just drag it into my day, and it's still there. It just creates copies of copies, so I can just drag it as many times. So it's a bit like ideas, that you can store in your master list for things you can do. And so yeah, you can have this as bonus work. But of course, bonus work, you can also just do things, that have orange stars if you already did all your red stars or something like that. But the anytime activities, there's another kind of cool thing. It's called Help is Here. And the way I set this up is in my master list, I created this separate category where it's just productivity list. But of course, you can also file this differently. And then I was just sort of brainstorming like different things that I can do that maybe help me when I feel stressed, or things that can energize me when I have low energy, or just anything that can make me feel kind of productive, but that are still easy to do. And this is maybe helpful if you have one of these days where you just can't really get going, and your list just feels overwhelming, all these big things. And it can help to sometimes just at least do something that's a little bit productive instead of just completely giving up and hiding under the covers. Or turning on, Netflix and just go on a binge, which just leads to, the spiraling. So then I added, ideas of things that, that are pretty easy to do. Like I could, just stretch for 7 minutes, or 5 minutes of exercise. That's at least something healthy for my body, or pick up stuff around the house for just 5 minutes. Like super easy tasks, right? Same with stress relief. What if in a moment I feel really stressed? I need maybe ideas for what can I do now? And all these tasks are pinned, right? Because it's just sort of things that I can do to help me with these problems I can run into. And then here I created this tab, Help is Here. So, if I struggle, then the first step is identifying, why am I struggling right now? Am I stressed? Am I low energy? Or do I just, somehow I can't get started because of anxiety or whatever? So then I can just go here and open this list and think about, okay, what do I want to do? And just pick one. And yeah, this is sort of these anytime activities where you can set it up here, just if you need, ideas for what to do. And then the last way that you can use Smartlists is batching. And batching is probably something you're familiar with. It's this idea that if you do similar tasks, all at once, it's more efficient. So if I have 5 phone calls to make, it's a good idea if I just take my phone and I just do one phone call after another. And the way that I set this up is with the thing I showed you where you can just use the title, because if you're using best practices and you always have the verb of the activity in the task, then you'll have all the calls, they'll have call in them. And then you can just make a list based on the title that contains the word call. Now, since you want to do this all at once, this isn't actually the most efficient thing to use this smart list in the sidebar, because then you have to schedule one at a time. Later, you will be able, like I said, to go into the master list, get the sidebar here, open this, and then just do them there. But for now, you can also go to the search. And because you set up this call smart list for batching, you can use this smart list here and just say calls. And then you can highlight them and bulk schedule them all to today if you want. Again, this will get easier as we improve this smart list. But yeah, definitely give us all the feedback about smart lists. If you're using smart lists or you use smart lists after this, it will become more and more important. And there's so much cool stuff you can do. And this is all, I think I went over all the ideas, to give you some kind of ideas of the different ways you can use them. Here's the breakdown again of how they can help you, the smart lists. It's kind of like something I also like to think about. It gives you sort of this buffet where, it's like a bit more organized in different ways, where you can just have this buffet of tasks on the left and pick from there. And it's just maybe more interesting to not always just look at it through the master list lens, but basically any lens that you want. And so you can ask questions now if you have them, and I'm going to just kind of talk a bit about what we have planned with the smart lists. So one thing we definitely still have to do is so that they can be sorted, so that you can have them automatically sorted already, which is also something that you'll specify when you create the smart list. And then another thing is that you can limit it to X number of items. So you just say, I just want to see the 10, most urgent items that are coming up in the next 30 days, for example. And then we'll add more filters. So on this left, we need, like I said, the procrastinated. So how many times you've procrastinated something already. That's pretty important. And as we add more features, like start dates and soft deadlines and stuff like that, of course, we'll always add them here as well. But, sometimes we might miss something or we just haven't done it, but always feel free to just mention it if you need something. And then we'll kind of also make the smart list easier to use. Like I said, we'll have them up here on the right so that you can set them up there. And with the new master list, you will be able to just work directly off the smart list if that's something you want without scheduling it first. So you can just go in there and check the smart list and do these tasks, sort of how you're maybe used to it from other apps. And someone also had a great idea, the dashboard. The dashboard right now is a bit definitely underdeveloped. But you could have smart lists here. So then maybe if you want to incorporate the dashboard in some way, where you can see them here. And then they will be integrated into lots of other strategies like the time blocks. So in the time blocks, you'll be able to, when we have the new time blocks, basically use the same types of filtering to specify what kinds of tasks you want to do in a time frame. So here I could already automatically map this to the smart list I created, so these properties. And now why would this be helpful? Well, one thing we do want to do is have this auto scheduling feature, so you don't have to do this manually where you map out your week when you want to do what kinds of tasks, and then you have to always check, okay, what did I plan for today, when, and then drag them. But Marvin could basically give you automatic suggestions and plan it for you based on what's most important. Or he could just know what time block you're in, and then you can have this thing where you just say, Marvin, tell me what to do next, and he'll just, based on the parameters that you set on the time block, always kind of knows what tasks you should be working on right now. And then he can just give you one task at a time. And similarly, if you watched the last webinar with the projects, you can of course do really cool custom stuff there, because if they're smart, and you can set up parameters of when you want to see what kinds of projects. It can all sort of be automated so that if you're, and then you just specify the time block and say, I want to work on household then and Marvin then, and it will always show you this filtered list here automatically based on the time. And so yeah, there's other things coming up like cubes and boards that will kind of use the same idea of smart lists. And one thing we want to integrate in the smart list is this random task idea. And that was very highly requested as well, because if you've ever used a task jar, you can, that's kind of like this random idea, right? Because you package everything you have planned in your day into this jar and you get one out at random. But what if you want to get random tasks straight from the master list? But you obviously want to, not just get maybe any random task, but maybe just a random task for Marvin or a random task that's 5 minutes. And then you kind of can use the smart list there as well. And, for example, here, if help is here would be a good example. I just want to have stress relief, but I don't maybe want to pick which one I want to do. And then you could click, maybe it's a wand or something, and then you click it and it just gives you a random one basically. So this will be integrated in all the smart lists in many different ways. So one actually request, because we do want to have a good icon that always sort of tells you this is a smart list, or to kind of like here on the right we need an icon. So if you have any ideas for a good icon for the smart lists, I'm always looking for icon ideas. And are there any questions, Mark?
So we got some good suggestions, and Anthony asked about documentation for the advanced.
Yeah, for sure. Would they have to be, so the documentation for the advanced reverse Polish notation, would they have to be inside the app, or can I set them up in help base somewhere? Probably. Let's think about where I could add them. Go to smart lists. Yeah, I mean, ideally it would be right there, more information. It's definitely not the easiest to use. Yeah, I guess maybe we can do it in an overlay. But yeah, that's really definitely important. I mean, ideally in the future, we do want to make the syntax a bit easier and extend the syntax. But it's a lot of work code-wise, so we kind of did the quick thing first. But yeah, we'll try to get this done pretty soon. At least somewhere where you can read it on our website. Oh, okay, so how you can insert icons into smart lists, ask Michelle. So the icons is basically something that is not right now integrated into Marvin automatically, but if you're on a Mac, you can use Control, Command, and then the space bar, and then it opens this menu. So if you're on a Mac, you can do this anywhere, and you get access to the icons. And I think Windows 10 has something as well. So you'd have to maybe Google that, how to add icons there. And then other people, if your computer doesn't allow you to do it automatically, you can just have some kind of website where you can copy and paste them. For smart lists, it makes sense because you just have to do it once, and it's kind of nice to have the icons. But it's obviously not practical for tasks unless you can have it integrated. So is there any other questions that I missed? Because I can't see them right now.
I don't think there have been any other questions.
Okay. Cool. Any other suggestions?
So Tom had an idea. He suggested that parallel to frogs, that we have fruit tasks, like low-hanging fruit.
Oh yeah, that's fun.
Because you were talking about doing that with the smart list.
Right. Yeah, low-hanging fruit. Oh yeah, that's something I guess I missed. Sometimes there's another strategy, I guess. When I create tasks, I already kind of think about, is this something that I actually like doing or dread doing, or is this fun? And then I sometimes just add labels, so quick win or fun. And this is helpful because it reminds me when I feel slow, it's another way that I can actually just be productive, because then I make maybe a list for fun tasks. We have to be kind to ourselves, and on days where we sometimes just really do not feel like we can get ourselves to do something hard, like discipline is not constant. Some days we just have more of it, and then it's great if we have a list of things we actually like to do, and then we can do them. Because, in every project, there's just things we like more and less. And similarly, the frogs kind of, if you use them to just assign it as a dread level, but of course you can do that with labels as well. It just helps us to become aware of ahead of time that maybe we're at risk of procrastinating it, and it would also be a good procrastination strategy. So just try to do at least one dread task every day to just kind of train that muscle in the brain where we override this avoidance instinct, which is what procrastination is. We're just trying to avoid something that is uncomfortable. And it's literally like a muscle. You have to train to do something despite not wanting to do something. And that's actually, if you are aware, we're having a procrastination boot camp next year where you can sort of join, and it's all about procrastination. You will sort of be all together, and it's all online, but it's a sort of a group experience as well. And there we'll set up a training program where you basically train to overcome procrastination. And all it is that you have to train to do things even if you don't want to do them. So that's another way that you could use labels and, just kind of keep a list of things you're dreading.
So here's a good question for you.
Yeah, another good question. What is currently available or future influence would you be open for spontaneous use or don't follow a rigid time schedule? Yes, this is a great question. So the question, the way I interpret it, is that what alternatives do we have, or things that we have planned for people who don't like to follow a strict plan? And so because the basic workflow is that you plan your day, right? But already there's different ways to do it, and you don't have to be strict about time necessarily. But even if you don't want to, so yeah, you can just leave out the time component completely, right? And just create a list, which is one way to flexibility. But if you don't want to plan ahead specific tasks, you can plan ahead to work on projects. And then this is something we talked about in the last webinar. There's actually a strategy right here. So instead of picking tasks, you can just say, well, I just want to focus on this project tomorrow or today. You can also do this spontaneously, right, in the moment. Or give you, an option of the 3 most important projects. You have them up here, and then in the moment you just kind of decide, what do I want to tackle right now? And then you go into here, and again you have choice because you have all these tasks for this project, and you can just kind of spontaneously decide which tasks to do in that project. So yeah, you do not have to necessarily plan ahead, and especially with the smart lists, there's a lot that you can do spontaneously, where again you would just maybe look at what's due soon, or look at what's really important right now if you have a priority list here, and then just decide spontaneously. And you can of course do this task by task. You just always do this. Now maybe if you really, really prefer that because of reasons where you just hate structure or planning ahead, then it will be worth it. But if you're really focused on efficiency, it's obviously not the most efficient thing to do, because you're constantly switching between planning and working. And those are different kinds of modes in our brain, because planning requires you to kind of zoom out and think about, make decisions, right? And about the big picture, like what should I do next? And that can zap a lot of brain energy, and then you don't have that energy available to do tasks, because it's limited per day how much energy we have. And it's also this, constant making decisions again. But if you are good at making decisions and you enjoy it and you like being spontaneous, then this will work better for you. But yeah, definitely be aware of sort of the problems and the limitations, because everything has pros and cons. But that's one way. And in the future, we will have ways where you can just sort of set up buckets here, so that you could have a bucket for, tasks that are due soon right in your day already, and then click on it to get a random one out if you don't even want to make a choice. So this could be an alternative if you don't want to have a day plan, but you also do not like picking necessarily, because some people have trouble making decisions, especially when we have a lot of stuff to do. So then you can just get things out. And yeah, the time blocks is a similar way. You don't necessarily have to plan exactly which task to do. You can plan which projects to do, or you can also just plan which areas in your life to work on when. So then, in your the time blocking strategy, you just map out from 8 to 10, I want to work on my area of life, that's my work, Marvin. And then from 10 to 11, I want to do some household stuff, because that's also an important area of my life. And so you just define that. But if you don't have any structure, like no limits to what to do when, or any organization, it might work if you have only very few tasks. But as soon as you have a lot of tasks, most people will run into some kind of big problems and inefficiencies where you just overwhelmed with what to do next. But yeah, you can definitely be spontaneous in Marvin, especially once we have the master list differently. You don't have to plan anything if you don't want to, or schedule things. You can just work from the master list and jump around in here and check things off in the master list. And if you have any other idea of how you would want to work, definitely let us know. And maybe something we have planned, maybe it's a new idea, and we would be happy to consider it and add it to Marvin. But yeah, it's a very good observation that right now, this is because it's our core concept, because it does have so many advantages and works well for so many people, is that the idea is that you kind of plan your day a bit. And the very, very basic workflow is that you plan your tasks. Usually when I do that, I am extremely efficient. Like, I do get a lot done. But I totally also have days where the list is just a turn off, and I'd rather just, kind of pick things in a different way. But there's always a way to do it. So that's great. In the time block, somebody's asking if you can copy it. And what you can do is copy an entire week. Actually, since we're doing this whole thing, I don't even... So you can, copy the entire week to the clipboard.
We covered that.
Oh, you covered it already?
Yeah, we talked about that.
Oh, okay. So yeah, but just for anybody who wasn't reading the comments, you can copy weeks. That's kind of usually how you want to use the time blocks, because the time blocks, again, like, even though it says a calendar, right now, basically the calendar is just used for time blocks. Like, you don't have events in there, you don't have tasks in there. It's just sort of to map out the areas of your life into your week. Because if you have, let's say 5 projects, work, hobbies, and side business, whatever, personal project of getting healthy, a lot of people are trying to cram everything always into one day. And then they're like, well, how do I get all this in one day? But it's much, much easier to, when you're trying to create this balance in your life, to think about 1 week at a time. There's actually even a book about this. It's called 168 Hours, because it's how many hours you have in the week. And you just try to fit these things into your week. And this is kind of something that the time blocks are awesome for, where you can, maybe first block out all the time you don't have available because of commitments or sleep or just eating, and hygiene things. And then you can see how much time you actually have left. And then you can start mapping out, I want to do, 5 hours of this. And you can sort of see this pie chart of how you allocated the time between your areas of your life. So that's one way to use and so since then it's usually kind of the same, you can just copy it over with these little icons on the top right. But yeah, we should probably also be able to copy days. Okay, another question?
It's not a question, just a comment on what you were talking about.
Yeah. Habits and gamifications should well fit it. Yeah, the gamification, there's a lot of fun things you can do there for spontaneity. Yeah, I think in some ways, this idea that Marvin just kind of maybe asks you what you feel like doing or how you're feeling, and then tries to match it to tasks. There's a lot of kind of cool things you can do. Okay, so I think this is it. Again, if you want to talk more about the Smartlists, have any more questions, or if you have cool ideas or there's something you're missing, you can always email me, contact@amazingmarvin.com. And if you are a member, you get access to our Facebook community, where you can also ask questions and write ideas and share workflows, because I'm kind of curious now if these smart lists have maybe triggered some ideas, or if you've got something useful that you took away from this, and to see what cool things you all come up with. So thanks so much for joining us, and see you next week.
Bye, thank you.
Bye.